Hello and welcome to the Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. With me today, of course, is Peter Lavelle, co-founder of the Gaggle and host of RT's talk show Crosstalk. Well, the COVID distribution has begun, and already we're being told that this is not the end, nor is it the beginning of the end. We're, in fact, only at the beginning, because apparently all of the lockdowns, all of the mask wearing, all of everything that we have had to endure over the past close to 12 months now will continue into the indefinite future. We've been told by no less an authority than Anthony Fauci that even if you have the vaccine, you must go on wearing the mask, which again flies in the face of what we've been told about vaccines and antibodies and so on. And so, given that we're only at the beginning, the suspicion arises as to, was there always an agenda underlying this? Was there always some plan that this state of crisis, these drastic restrictions on our freedom of movement, freedom to work and whatever, was that always a part of the plan? And because we know very well that political leaders, when they get a huge amount of power, they don't like to give them up. And so the governors who have been in the United States, who have been imposing these restrictions, they're not about to give any of these restrictions up. So what is behind it? And one then thinks about, well, what else might be on the horizon? We know that the other day, Joe Biden talked about the climate crisis as being not an existential crisis, but a national emergency. So you have to wonder whether this state of lockdown, state of fear, it will now be the new normal and a way of addressing the climate crisis, which hitherto, the doomsayers have failed to get much support for, and that this will now become the part of the agenda of financial, commercial, political elites of imposing restrictions on the public at large. What's your take?
Well, neither one of us are in a position to make the claim that this was intentionally brought about. But it seems to, never waste a good crisis here, and this is what it's turned into. Certainly, it's that the people instituting, people in power have learned that people are very pliant. They will do what they're told, and that's the way you and I were brought up. I mean, this is an emergency. There's some rules you should follow, and we basically would do it. But then when you say, well, why are you moving the goalposts? I mean, you keep moving the goalpost on us. So what's the point of the warp speed vaccine if it's not going to change our lives? Because that's why we want, and that's why we're told to take the vaccine, is because then we can go back to something that we understand to be normal. Now it seems to be they're implying more and more strongly that it's not going to be the case. And we've seen also is that there's very little pushback against the exercise of executive power, particularly in the states, in the United States. So then there's a next logical step. And this is, we did a video on this before, the Great Reset, Build Back Better. Well, again, these are kind of empty words when you don't have the right to decide what they mean. You just have to comply with what someone else thinks they mean. I mean, it's really interesting is that the talk now is, again, from Fauci and others, is that if the fact, having taken the vaccine is not going to fundamentally or even incrementally, I guess, change our lives, then what is the point of it? And then the next step is well, if you take the vaccine, then you get some kind of certificate, or they give you a barcode on your phone. Well, what if you don't want to participate in it? It is not mandatory. Does that turn you into a second-class citizen? It means you can't fly, you can't use the banking system, you can't go to a restaurant. I mean, what does this mean? I want to know what this means. Particularly if you overlap, the public should be made aware the number of deaths over the time period of this pandemic, and the number of deaths that would have occurred anyway because of other conditions, diabetes, cancer, obesity, a whole wide array of ailments. I truly believe that it's a real thing, but if the whole point is to get a vaccine is to take care of it, and then we're not going to see much difference after a vaccine, then what is the agenda here? Oh, I guess eating comes with the appetite. Is that what this means? Okay, now that you've found a mechanism for social control, you just take it to the next step and find the next goal. The next goal is to alleviate climate change, which the public is not behind that. I mean, public opinion poll after another, it tells us it's not high on the agenda. It's high on the agenda of people that make a living about talking about climate change and politicians that go along with it. Okay, Al Gore, I'm sorry, you've been making predictions for 20 years. Every single one of them is wrong.
Yeah, no, that is absolutely right. And of course, those of us who have been around for a while will remember the doomsayers from the 1960s and 1970s, because in the 1960s, the doomsday scenario was overpopulation. We were absolutely told that population would just go on expanding indefinitely. Resources are going to be used up, and there'll be forever. People remember that movie Soylent Green, which was a big blockbuster success.
And a really bad film too. But anyway,
even though it had Edward G. Robinson in it, but it was a terrible film. And then of course we had the doomsayers of the 1970s. We were told we're coming to a new ice age. Then we were told that oil would disappear, natural resources would disappear. We'd all suddenly one day we'd all wake up and there'll be no resources whatsoever. And so now we've got this new one, which is the climate change. And again, certainly the science does show there has been some warming of the planet, but the science does not show that this is an unmanageable crisis, that the planet is going to come to an end anytime in the near future. And the big one, which is just how much human activity is causing it and how much is just simply part of the natural climactic change that has gone on for millennia, on this planet. I mean, remember, we had tens of thousands of years of the ice age. So, these are things that happen. So, but this, I think this has been the common sense view, which is why all of the climate crisis people, like Al Gore and AOC and others who predicted, end of the world in 12 years, they never got much traction. But now this crisis has given them the opportunity. Hey, well, if we can have a lockdown for COVID, how about a lockdown for climate change?
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing for me, and what we've been talking about here at the Gaggle, is that they politicized the pandemic. There's no reason to believe they're not going to politicize everything else, okay, if it serves their agenda. I mean, one of the most discredited things, I don't think I would have ever said this, George, at the beginning of this year, but now I will say it now. Science has been completely discredited because it's been used in the service of politics and ideology. And so, not only did I have skepticism before this, now I'm doubly suspicious of what they want to do. And what it also will do is that it will create, and I keep mentioning a return to serfdom. Well, this will be kind of an apartheid system where, are you going to get a barcode on your phone or on your forehead, and that will allow you on airplanes and restaurants and use the banking system. And if you don't have the barcode, well, you're up shit creek, okay? I mean, and I think it's pretty easy to say which people will have the barcode and which ones won't, okay? Yeah, I mean, look how lockdowns have played out. Again, using the American example, the common parlance that we use, red state versus blue state. I mean, But if this is a national wide agenda, which I think is quite dubious constitutionally, but they're not, there's no hesitation to overreach here. I mean, this is what we've learned over the last 10 months. There's no hesitation to overreach because the courts seem to be quite hesitant to push back.
Right.
And who knows, George? Who knows, George? Because of the climate crisis, we need more immigration. Because of the climate crisis, we need to ban guns. Because of the climate crisis, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. See, this is the overreach that we should all be profoundly worried about, okay? And the operation worked. I mean, why not pursue it? I mean, I think this is what they're saying. And also, if you look at the political paralysis that we see in Washington, D.C., this will be something, this is an existential threat. This isn't a Republican thing. This isn't a Democrat thing. This is, this is the ultimate thing, okay? And then, executive orders and just putting down, essentially reordering society, the Great Reset, Build Back Better, all this other verbiage that we keep hearing, and it's really a terrifying potential assault on everything that we value.
No, that's exactly right, and it is because the science of COVID simply never justified the drastic restrictive measures that governments have adopted. It is by any standard a vast overreaction. COVID is not the Black Death, and it is not the influenza of 1918. We know children, young people, middle-aged people, by and large, are absolutely safe from it. At most, they get the mild symptoms, recover fully. The only people who are vulnerable are the elderly people, 80 plus. And we know we have the statistic to show it. The average age of death for people with COVID is above 80. Well, sad to say, human life is mortal, and people in their 80s do die. I mean, that is a sad fact of life. And therefore, to suggest that this is a horrific killer stalking the population is just simply not justified by the science.
Never in my lifetime did it ever happen, nor could I ever imagine it happening, where they want to police you in your own home. I mean, it used to be, every man's kingdom. What you do in your house is your business, okay? But now, no, that is a public space now. That's a remarkable turnaround in a few short months. That your public space, your private space, is a public space that can be policed by the authorities, telling people who they can spend the holidays with. This is extraordinary. What if it's a young family? What if it's a mother and father in their late 40s and they have a couple of toddlers? But the chances of them getting this virus is so small. I mean, it's not even quantifiable. Okay, and then on top of it, they say stay inside when the best thing is to be outside.
Exactly. Again, where's the science? The science is clear that if you're outside, particularly if you have some sun to enjoy, those are all good things. Those are those things to ensure that you will recover from any disease and ensure that you won't get the disease. So it makes absolutely no sense. It's just that people stay cooped up indoors.
Let me finish off on this point here, because I think it's really important, is that if what we're saying, God forbid, what we're saying comes as fruition in the most remote sense, is that this would be a possibility to criminalize dissent, the ultimate way to criminalize dissent. And I think that this is a very serious, pernicious possibility. We've seen how these governors react to. They're heartbreaking stories of these small and medium-sized businesses, the bars and the restaurants, and these people that just struggle so hard to follow the rules, and then they get batted down again. And of course, we haven't mentioned that we're going through a huge economic and financial crisis for tens of millions, of hundreds of millions of people across the Western world. If with, the big tech, they will intervene when they want to intervene. I mean, they were in the service of the Biden campaign when it came to Hunter. Will they be in the service of the administration when it comes to people that will not be on the same page when it comes to the new crisis, the perpetual crisis, the ultimate crisis? Then you can be disappeared. I'm being a little apocalyptic now, I admit it, but I think that's something we should keep in mind.
Oh, I don't think you are being apocalyptic, because this is already happening on social media. People are being censored who are expressing skepticism about COVID. I mean, there's already, it's already happening. And again, this is obviously preliminary to people being censored when they start expressing dissenting views on climate. You can extend it to other things. So what about people who are going to start expressing dissenting views on Russian hacks? Well, I don't really believe that Russia was behind this hack. Well, what do you mean you don't? That's it. You're banned from YouTube. You're banned from Facebook, on Twitter. It's going to be exactly that. That suddenly all sorts of views and opinions will be banned and would simply be deemed unacceptable. So I think this is part of the Great Reset. Again, many people are looking for it, and freedom of speech is a very tentative construct. It's only been around for a relatively short time. Most of the time, speech has been very severely censored, by churches, by kings and dictators and so on. So, we may be entering a new era of the censorship of speech, this time by big tech, finance, and so on.
Well, and don't forget that, a critical race theory is being thrown into this here too, is that who should get the vaccine first, okay? Because it's all about equity, okay? Which the word equity sounds nice on its face, but no, it is enforcing equity in the way these people have defined it is a purely authoritarian. And right. if you reject that, well, of course, you're a racist, okay, a denier. I mean, they'll throw everything at you. So I'm really glad we did this video, because I think it's really important to think about the implications of how people want to remake the world in the middle of what we've been told is a crisis.
Right. No, I agree with you. And I think we should be extremely vigilant and not just happily give up freedoms just because some politician is spouting for something and claiming he has science behind it, even though he doesn't.
Be eating in a restaurant and flying on his private plane. Don't worry about it, George. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah, the scientists who don't know one end of a Bunsen burner from the other. All right. Well, thanks very much, Peter. We will, of course, be maintaining our customary laser-like focus on COVID and the government restrictions, as per usual. And remember, if you like The Gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye.